The most starred list of free AP is on the internet, a file so widely used it is functionally a public utility for developers, and read the very first line, not the first entry, the first line of the document. It's an advertisement, a banner, an exclamation mark, a party emoji, and a sign-up link for a commercial API suite. Scroll past it and you reach the list's first category, ahead of animals, ahead of anime, ahead of everything alphabetical. And that category is the same company's product lineup, 11 products. And when you look at where those links actually point, 10 of the 11 carry tracking parameters, tagged with a campaign name I want you to hear in full. Public-APIs-repo-best-sellers. Best sellers in a list of free AP is. Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea about where this is going, that list is genuinely excellent. I've used it for years. It's MIT licensed, and there is nothing unlawful, hidden, or fraudulent happening here. This video isn't a takedown, it's a reading lesson, and the file is the perfect textbook. 3 things. First, a skill you'll use forever, and it takes 90 seconds to learn. How to read a URL's query string as a provenance record. The little tail of characters after the question mark that tells you, in plain text, who is getting credit for your click. Almost nobody looks. Once you do, half the internet's recommendation economy becomes legible, and you can never make it illegible again. Second, the audit, and the finding I did not expect. I counted everything in that file this morning. Entries, categories, every tracked link. The tracking turned out to be the small story. The bigger one is hiding in the ordering of the list itself, in 12 places. And you can verify it in about 30 seconds once you know what to look for. And third, the part I find genuinely fascinating, the same repository contains a rule that this arrangement sits in tension with. Not from me, from them. There's a paragraph in the contributing guide aimed at everyone who submits to this list that says something quite firm about marketing. I'll read it verbatim, next to the first line of the README, and let you hold both in your head at once. And then the part that makes this urgent, rather than merely interesting. This file is no longer read mainly by humans. It's one of the most likely documents on Earth to be handed to a coding agent that's been asked to find an API, which turns a question of editorial placement into a question about what goes into a machine's context window first. Plan, what the list actually is and why it's good. The 90-second skill, the audit, the 2 files, who pays, the agent problem, honest limits, and the step back. Standards note, everything here comes from that repository's own files as they stand this morning. The README, the contributing guide, the license, counted and quoted verbatim. Numbers are mine from the file. Let's go. First, the credit. Because this list has earned it. If you only take the criticism from this video and not the praise, you'll have learned the wrong lesson. The file is about 235,000 bytes of hand-curated developer reference, roughly 2,000 lines, 52 categories, and about 1,689 API entries. Animals to anime, anti-malware to art, weather to transit. Built by community contributions over years, MIT licensed, free to fork. And it isn't just links. Every entry carries 3 columns that answer the exact questions you have at 2 in the morning when you're building something. Does this need authentication? Is it served over HTTPS? Does it support cross-origin requests from a browser? That last column, CORS, is the difference between I can call this from my front end and I need to build a proxy first. And I have never seen another list bother to track it consistently. Run the numbers on that authentication column and you find why people love this file. Around 960 entries need no authentication at all. No sign-up, no key, no dashboard, just call it. That single column sorts the world into, I can try this in 30 seconds, and this is a project. So, real curation, real structure, real usefulness, given away under the most permissive license there is. Everything that follows is about one specific block of the file, and it should be read against everything I just said. The 90-second skill, reading a URL as a receipt. Here's the tool, and it works everywhere for the rest of your life. When you hover a link and see a question mark followed by a string of key equals value pairs, that's the query string. Parameters the page receives when you arrive. Some are functional, but 3 specific ones are not functional at all. They exist purely to tell an analytics dashboard where you came from. They're called UTM parameters, a naming convention older than most of the web you use. And the 3 that matter read like this: source, which site sent this person; medium, what kind of link it was; and campaign, which marketing effort to credit. Those 3 fields are in effect a receipt attached to your click. And here's the thing that makes them so useful for reading the internet honestly. Campaign names are written by marketers for marketers. Nobody expects the public to read them, so they're candid in a way public copy never is. A campaign name will cheerfully tell you the internal category a link belongs to. which is why the tag on those links is the most eloquent detail in this entire story. The links in that first block are tagged verbatim. Campaign equals public-apis-repo-best-sellers with source GitHub and medium referral. Not docs, not community, not reference. Bestsellers. The internal name for a company's top converting products, on links inside a community list of free APIs, in a campaign named after the repository itself. Nothing about that is illegal or even unusual in commercial terms, but it's a small window into how the link is understood by the people who placed it, and that's exactly what makes query strings such good evidence. The invoice is in the URL. People edit their public copy. Almost nobody edits their campaign tags. Try it tonight on anything, any best tools for article, any awesome list, any roundup. Hover the first 3 links without clicking. On a phone, long press. If you see the question mark and those 3 fields, you're looking at a paid or partnered placement, and the campaign name often names the program. No tooling, no extension, no account. And 2 honest calibrations so you don't overread it. Tracked does not mean bad. Plenty of companies tag every outbound link they own out of pure habit, including in documentation nobody is paid for. And untracked does not mean neutral. A deal can be struck without a single parameter attached. The parameters aren't a verdict, they're a lead. They tell you where to look harder. The audit, where the tracking actually is. So I counted every tracking parameter in the file and where each one sits. 127 UTM parameter instances across the whole document. 26 table rows carry them. Broken down by campaign tag, 28 links tagged bestsellers, 14 tagged with the plain repository campaign, and 1 lonely link tagged with the project's own name. Now the distribution, which is the actual finding. Out of about 1,689 entries in 52 categories, the tracked links are not scattered across the list at all. They are concentrated almost entirely in the header banner in that first category. 11 products from one company, 10 of them tracked. The 11th, interestingly, isn't, a small inconsistency that reads more like a rushed edit than a scheme. And there are other rushed edit tells if you look. The very first line of the file has a typo in its headline, and one bullet in the product list is spelled as one product while linking to a different one entirely. I mention those small errors for a reason. They're evidence of ordinary human haste, not conspiracy. This looks like exactly what it probably is. A company that sponsors or stewards a very popular open source list, placing its own products at the top of it, in a hurry, the way companies do. The rest of the file carries no tracking at all. 1,600-odd community entries, no campaigns, just links. So if you only counted tracking parameters, you'd conclude the commercial layer was a hat sitting on top of the list. Precisely 1 hat, thick. But then I checked the ordering, and that's where the real finding is. Every category in this file is alphabetical. Animals runs AdoptAPet, Axolotl, CatFacts. Anime runs AnyAPI, AnyDB, AnyList. It's a reference document. Alphabetical is the contract, and the community has kept it for years. Now look at what sits at the top of 12 of those categories. Weather doesn't begin with the entry starting in 7. It begins with Weatherstack. Finance doesn't begin with an A. It begins with Marketstack. News begins with Mediastack, then goes to Associated Press. Development begins with Userstack, then jumps to 24 pull requests. Email begins with Mailbox Layer, then A. Cryptocurrency begins with Coin Layer, then 0x. Photography, phone, geocoding, data validation, text analysis, same pattern. And currency exchange has 4 of them stacked at the top before the alphabet is allowed to start. I counted it precisely. 12 categories, 18 product rows, sitting above the alphabetical ordering that governs every other row in the document. In each case, the alphabet resumes perfectly on the very next line, which is how you know it isn't sloppiness. Someone lifted specific rows out of alphabetical order and pinned them to the top. That's a different claim than the banner, and a more interesting one. A banner is an ad, and everyone can see an ad. 18 rows quietly promoted to first position inside an alphabetical reference document is a change to the editorial substance of the list itself. And unlike the banner, those rows carry no tracking, no label, and nothing that distinguishes them from the community's own entries. The 2 files. Now the part that makes this a genuine editorial question rather than a shrug, and it comes entirely from their own repository. Open the contributing guide, the document every person who submits an entry is asked to read. Its opening block, verbatim. While the masses of pull requests and community involvement are appreciated, some pull requests have been specifically opened to market company APs that offer paid solutions. This API list is not a marketing tool, but a tool to help the community build applications and use free, public APs quickly and easily. Pull requests that are identified as marketing attempts will not be accepted. And it goes further, setting the bar for what belongs. Please make sure the API you want to add has full, free access or at least a free tier and does not depend on the purchase of a device/service before submitting. That's a good rule. It's the rule that keeps a list like this trustworthy, and it's enforced against outsiders. You can watch it happen in the pull request history any day of the week. Now hold that next to line 1 of the README, a promotional banner for a commercial suite complete with sign-up link and referral tracking, followed immediately by that company's product catalog as the list's first category. I want to be scrupulous here, because there are 2 honest readings, and you deserve both. The generous reading, which I think is largely right. Somebody has to pay for a resource this size. Hosting, moderation, years of maintenance against link rot. Sponsorship is a completely legitimate answer, arguably the healthiest one available for open source infrastructure. The products are real, several have genuine free tiers, and the arrangement isn't hidden. It's right at the top of the page where nobody could miss it, and the tracking is in plain text in the URLs. That's the opposite of sneaky. The critical reading, which I also think is right, the rule as written applies to contributors, not to the top of the file, and the disclosure that does exist is doing a very particular job. Here it is, verbatim. The public AP as repository is manually curated by community members like you and folks working at API layer. Read that sentence as a piece of writing. It's warm, it's inclusive. Community members like you. The commercial relationship arrives inside a friendly sentence about curation, not as a funding statement. It tells you who edits, it doesn't tell you who benefits from the ordering. There's a real difference between our staff help maintain this and we sponsor this project and our products appear first, and only the first one is on the page. The gap between those 2 readings would close with almost nothing. 1 word on the promoted rows. Not a redesign, not a removal. A small sponsored tag on the 18 rows that skip the alphabet, and a funding line that says plainly what the arrangement is. That would cost the sponsor nothing, because as this video is demonstrating, all of it is discoverable anyway. And the lesson generalizes far past this one repository. A disclosure that names the relationship but not the placement is a disclosure that only the suspicious will finish reading. Tell people who pays, and then tell them what the money moved. So what good looks like? The disclosure ladder. Since this channel's habit is to name the standard rather than only the failure, here's the ladder from worst to best. Every rung exists in the wild right now. Rung 1, untagged and unmarked. Sponsored entries mixed into the list with no tracking and no label, indistinguishable from community submissions. That's the genuinely bad one. And it's worse than what we're looking at today because there's nothing to find. Ironically, tracking parameters make a list more auditable, not less. Rung 2, tagged and named, but not on the placements. The relationship is stated somewhere on the page, and the header links carry tracking, yet the promoted rows inside the list are indistinguishable from community entries. That's where today's file sits. The relationship is disclosed, the ordering isn't. Rung 3, labeled inline. A small sponsored tag on the block, the way podcasts mark an ad read. Costs nothing, removes all ambiguity. Rung 4, the gold standard. Labeled and sorted honestly. The sponsor gets a clearly marked block. The editorial list keeps whatever order serves the reader, and a funding note says who pays and what they get. A handful of large open source projects do exactly this, and their credibility is measurably higher for it. The latter is worth carrying because you'll now spot it everywhere. The question is never, is this sponsored? Almost everything useful and free is sponsored somehow. The question is which rung they chose. Who pays? The receipt in the query string. Standing rule on this channel. When something valuable is free, find the invoice. This is the cleanest example I've ever put on air, because the invoice is literally printed in the links. The model, the list is free and MIT licensed, forever. The traffic it earns, enormous, sustained, developer-heavy, exactly the audience a commercial API company wants, is monetized by placing that company's products in the highest attention position and tagging the clicks so conversions can be counted. That's it. No dark pattern, no paywall, no bait and switch. And it belongs to a family this channel has cataloged all month. Free because it sells the hosted version, free because it sells the training platform, free because it sells the model by the token. Here's the newest entry. Free because attention is the product. The oldest arrangement in media, arriving in a developer reference file. A list is an editorial product, and the first row of a list is the most expensive real estate in it. Which is worth saying plainly and without cynicism. This is fine. Sponsored open source infrastructure is better than abandoned open source infrastructure. The only thing at stake is whether you know, and now you do. And more importantly, you can now check for yourself, on any list, in any repository, in about 5 seconds. Now the part that's actually new, your reader is a machine. Everything I've described is a familiar story from 20 years of the web. Here's what's different in 2026. This file is one of the most likely documents on Earth to be fed to an agent. Ask a coding agent for a free weather API, a currency API, an IP geolocation API, the kinds of things in that first block. And there is a very good chance the retrieval it does lands on this exact README, because it is the canonical answer to that question and has been for years. And agents read differently than you do. You scroll past a banner because your eyes have 20 years of training in banner blindness. An agent has no banner blindness. It ingests the document in order, and everything in it arrives as text of equal standing. The sponsor headline, the first category, the community's 51 other categories. If the context budget is tight, and it always is, the top of a 200,000 byte file is what survives truncation. The first category is not just the first thing a human sees, it's the part of the document most likely to be the only part a machine sees. And now recall those 18 promoted rows. A retrieval system asked for whether AP is, pulls the weather section and takes the top of it. A summarizer asked to list a few free geocoding options, takes the first few rows. Alphabetical ordering is arbitrary, but neutral. Being pinned above it is not. Those rows aren't just first for a reader who scrolls. They're first for a machine that truncates. That's not an accusation about anyone's intent. Most of that placement predates the agent era by years. It's an observation about what placement now means. In a world where machines read reference documents on our behalf, position stopped being about attention and started being about inclusion. Ranking has become retrieval. So the practical advice, and it's the reason to build the URL habit today. When an agent hands you a recommendation, ask where it read that. Open the source, look at the first block, check the links for campaign tags. It takes seconds, and it's rapidly becoming one of the few defenses a person has against automated recommendations that are laundered through a machine's neutral-sounding voice. Your agent didn't decide that suite was the best answer. It read a file. Someone chose the order of that file. Honest limits. 6. 1. I read the repository's files, not its finances. The README, the contributing guide, the license, this morning. I'm describing what those documents contain. I'm not describing any agreement between anyone because I haven't seen one and don't claim to. 2. Sponsorship is legitimate, and nothing here suggests wrongdoing. The AP is in that first block are real products with real free tiers. My entire critique is about a missing disclosure sentence and a placement decision, not about honesty, legality, or quality. 3. I didn't test a single API in that list, not one call. Uptime, quality, and whether the free tiers are generous are all outside what this video checked. 4. The ordering finding is a judgment about pattern, and here's my method so you can check it. Every category in the file is alphabetical. I looked at which rows sit above that ordering, and in 12 categories, those rows are the sponsor's own products with the alphabet resuming immediately after. That's a strong pattern, not a confession. There may be history behind individual rows I don't know about. 5. The counts are mine from this morning's file, and this file changes constantly. Entries get added and delisted daily. If you count next week, expect different totals, and please do count. That's the whole point. And 6. This pattern is everywhere, and singling out one list would be unfair if I let you think it's unique. It isn't. Awesome lists, comparison sites, best of roundups, and half the recommendation layer of the internet run on the same economics. This one is simply the most starred, best documented, easiest to verify example available, which makes it the ideal place to learn the skill, not the worst offender. Step back, because this connects to the thread this channel has been pulling all month. Text now carries a watermark so you can ask where it came from. A Frontier harness ships an append-only log of everything its model ever read, inspectable by source. A lab publishes benchmark footnotes naming its harness, its judge, and its remove checks. Evidence cards on this channel carry their file and line number. Every one of those is the same idea arriving in a different layer. Provenance is becoming a feature. And here's the layer nobody thinks to check, because it's been in front of us since the 90s, the link itself. A URL is not just an address. It's a small, honest, machine-written record of who benefits when you click it, sitting in plain text in every recommendation you've ever been given, waiting to be read. In an era where more and more of what you read was assembled by something that doesn't get suspicious, that tail of characters after the question mark is one of the last pieces of provenance nobody bothers to launder. So read the URLs. It costs nothing, and it's the only reading skill I know that gets more valuable the more the internet automates. Here's my question, and I'll pin it below. What's the best genuinely free API you actually use in production? And what's its real catch? Rate limit, cold starts, a free tier that quietly narrowed last year, an unlimited plan with a fair use clause doing heavy lifting, name the API and the catch in one comment. A crowdsourced list of real catches written by people running things in production would be more useful than any list of links, and I'll build the best of them into a follow-up. Every link, the repository, the contributing guide with that paragraph in it, and this channel's other Who Pays breakdowns is in the description. Go read the first 15 lines of that file yourself, then hover a link. 90 seconds, and you'll never read a best of list the same way. That's the standard here. The file actually counted, the useful part credited first, the critique narrowed to a missing sentence, both readings put on the table, and the invoice found where it always is, in the URL. If you'd rather own your tools than rent them, subscribe. That's what we do every single day. I'll see you in the next one.